Welcome to the Collaborative. I'm your host, Sydney Walker, along with Ryan Ballas. Today, we are joined by Brendan Dunne. He is the GM of Soul Collector and runs all sneaker content between Complex Sneakers and Soul Collector. He is also a co-host of the YouTube sneaker talk show, Full Size Run, and the Complex Sneakers podcast. Dunne graduated from the University of Oregon. Welcome.
How is everyone?
Good.
Go Ducks. That was a rough loss this weekend, but I'm still happy to be a University of Oregon graduate.
That's what we like to hear.
So first up, we have Sid's This or That UO edition. So first up, Barnhart Brunch or Carson Buffet?
Oh wow. See, I love that we're getting right into this. This is tough because Barnhart Brunch is so good, but I always felt a little out of place because it was so for the athletes. So you step in there and maybe you're not welcome on some level, or like you got to walk a couple of blocks. Carson, I definitely spent a lot more time at Carson, and I loved the buffet. Actually, I went and ate at Carson a couple years ago when I was in town just to see a football game. So I think Barnhart Brunch has the better food, but I'm gonna go with Carson in my heart because that's where I spent more time.
I lived in Barnhart, so that's me all day long.
I respect it.
Tracktown Pizza or Doco?
Oh wow, I love this. I love this. I think Doko. I think Doko is more nostalgic for me, especially as a freshman. Ordering from there, like just like cookies at 2 a.m. or things like that. You were hungry at odd hours for various reasons that we won't go into here. But I remember especially like Doko. You would call, and I think everybody who was in the dorms had the same address. You had to tell them exactly like which cross streets your dorm was at, or something like that. You had to be very specific. I'm going to say Doko on that one.
Good choice. I think they win solely because of the cookies.
Yes, Doko cookie. The later into the night you get, the better they taste. They taste better at 2 a.m. than they do at 1 a.m.
I agree. Starbucks or Dutch Bros?
You know what? I'm not a coffee drinker, so I didn't spend any time at either. So I have to pass on this one. I have no horse in this race.
Alrighty, fair enough. And last but not least, Marcus Mariota or Justin Herbert?
I mean, it's got to be Marcus. All due respect to Justin Herbert, it's got to be Marcus.
All right. They both balled out against each other this year, but I respect your decision. So to kick things off, can you tell us your first sneaker memory, whether it was a shoe you waited in line for or a commercial you saw that got you excited about a new release? Just one pinpoint that set you up for where you are today.
Yeah, so for me, I grew up in North Idaho between there and Oregon. So where I was living when I was a teenager and really getting into sneakers, there weren't a lot of lineups or anything like that to really participate in physically. So my earliest memories have to do with being online and finding websites like Nike Talk or Hypebeast or Complex that were covering sneakers. I think a really pivotal moment for me early on was watching the 2005 documentary Just for Kicks, and that was really a good primer, and I think still stands as the best sneaker documentary. But in terms of learning everything that was going on at the time and why Nike SBs were important or what the Air Force One meant to people in New York City. So I think seeing that movie was what really crystallized it early on for me, Just for Kicks in 2005. I think there have been a lot of attempts at sneaker documentary since, but all of them have fallen short from that one for me.
That's really awesome to hear your first memory, what really got you into this business. So thank you.
Yeah.
Brendan, with sneakers and everything, we usually talk about key moments in the marketing cycle or athletes wearing a certain shoe that make the moment, right? How crucial do you think are these athlete engineered moments? Like, it's not a shoe example, but LeBron gifting his teammates Beats for the 2008 Beijing Olympics. More and more we see stuff like this coming up with marketing cycles and it being engineered and fabricated from the athletes and the wearers themselves. So what do you think is more important, the hype from athletes wearing shoes or hype generated from the marketing departments of the companies?
Um, I think we've shifted away from the athletes being the most important in terms of driving a sneaker. I think that traditionally was the way it worked decades ago, and certainly for a lot of the retro shoes that we enjoy now. I think Air Jordan's being the best example of this, but I think that their influence is waning a little bit in terms of what really makes sneakers cool right now. And I think that they still do have a lot of that power, but even some of that power has shifted from being less on court moments and different moments in their life where they may be seen next to a big entertainer or artist or something like that. So I do think that's important. And I do think sport performance and performance product is really important when you talk about sports footwear and what a sneaker really is. So I don't think we should ever lose sight of that. But I think in terms of marketing and generating hype and energy, I think that an athlete wearing a shoe in their sport is less important than it was before,
Definitely, and I think that whole landscape is shifting in a way that we haven't seen before. So it'll definitely be interesting to see what comes of it.
for sure.
Brendan, as co-host of Full Size Run, you all have had some really awesome guests, such as Allison Felix, Big Boy, and ASAP Ferg, to name a few. What does it mean to you to have the outlet to not only discuss a subject you're passionate about, but also bring on other influential artists and athletes?
I love it. I mean, I think a lot of people have so many sneaker stories that just haven't been told. And I think that there's a handful of entertainers or athletes that we think of as the big sneakerheads, but so many of us grew up into this stuff and then spending a lot of time, hours and hours of our lives researching shoes or figuring out where to get shoes or lining up for shoes. So to be able to find those stories from people who come from different backgrounds and have different relationships, somebody who grew up in Yonkers like Jadakiss is not going to have the same experience as someone like Allison Felix who went to University of Oregon and had access to top tier footwear as a Nike athlete. So I love finding the different avenues through which people appreciate shoes. And, somebody like Jim Jones, who doesn't necessarily know the name of every single limited hype drop, but was there when sneakers were becoming culturally important in Harlem and things like that. So I love to find these different kinds of stories. And to me, the show is really about the way in which people relate to shoes.
I think it's really cool that you can offer your perspective because you do this day in and day out, then also hear what they have to offer someone who may not know as much as you do, but also they do it for fun or just want to learn more about it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm always more interested in other people's perspectives than my own. You know what I mean? Like, I've been doing this for a while, but I think there's people who've been doing it a lot longer than me. So I'm always interested in hearing what they have to say.
Well, for this next question, I was really interested in what you had to say in regards to ranking your top 5 shoes of 2020. You put at number 1 the Off-White Jordan 5, and you've been in this industry for a while, Brennan, and really had the opportunity to see a lot of different collabs take place and grow between companies and different designers. Do you foresee this trend of collaboration between a designer and a company like Virgil and Off-White working with Nike? Do you foresee this trend changing positively or negatively in the years to come?
I think the brands will continue to work with artists and designers and influencers in a way like this. And I think to me, they'll become even closer. If you think about it, someone like Kanye West at Nike at that point was kind of considered a collaborator or somebody who had his own one off shoe. And now he's to a point in his relationship with Adidas where he's not really a collaborator. He kind of has his own business unit within the brand. And someone like Virgil Abloh, even his work with Nike is trending toward that point as well, where it started out with a collection that was 10 shoes, which was pretty deep at the time and unprecedented, but now it's like this ongoing, almost entire line. So I think that these big designers and big names in the space will continue to work more closely with brands and get a bigger piece of that. Even more recently, Jerry Lorenzo, a guy who went from being kind of a collaborator level to Nike, although his business with them was big, to now he's being named the leader of their basketball category. So I think the brands will continue to look for those outside partners and give them even bigger roles in their companies.
Definitely. I think it'll be something interesting to pay attention to in the years to come.
The sneaker industry kind of started as an underground community, but now household names in sports and entertainment have joined the club from spending and collecting to admiring shoes. What does that growth look like from your position?
To me, I'm just surprised how much of a pop cultural thing it's become. Like you said, Sydney, early on, collecting sneakers or being really into sneakers, being obsessed with them was sort of a nerdy subcultural thing. And to see the trajectory of it now, where I have nieces and nephews who are in high school and it's just a regular thing that what shoes are coming out, or what a Concord Jordan 11 comes out, or what an Air Max 1 looks like, or when the new Yeezys are dropping. Like, I'm still surprised at how far it's come in terms of becoming mainstream culture. That was a thing that I really didn't see happening, but kind of played a part in as I got into this industry and, was helping amplify these stories or helping people care about shoes and understand why they were important.
In the ever expansive world that is content creations, what factors do you think are key in creating something like Full Size Run and Soul Collector and making them stand out against its competitors, since there are so many lookalikes and copies of successful things that you've been a part of?
Yeah, I think it's really about having an opinion or having some type of take on things. There's enough YouTube unboxing videos for sneakers where any given shoe, there's going to be somebody telling you the basic details of it, when it's coming out, what the colorway is, how much it's going to cost, how much it might resell for, things like that. I really don't think those pieces of information are super valuable right now because they're very easy to access. So to me, it's about having a funny spin on it or having a deeper insight to it because you're able to talk to a designer or figure out from a retail really how figure out from a retailer really how limited these things are. So I think there's ways like that where you just have to make sure you're actually offering something that is differentiated.
100%. And what you guys do with Full Size Run, I mean, I've started watching you guys a couple of years ago, and the whole reason I watch you guys is because you have different opinions than everyone else on the internet. And not only that, but like you said, making it funny or having a different take on it. So definitely thank you for that.
Yeah, we try and create a space where we can really share our opinions because I think in the early days of sneaker blogging or sneaker media, there really wasn't enough of that. So we're trying to fill that void to some extent.
Definitely. And I think you guys have done a great job with you, Trinidad, and Welty, all doing great things with it.
Thank
So
you,
that's
man. I
really
appreciate
awesome.
that.
Yeah, of course. And I think something that a lot of people focus too much on is using their degree in their exact field. However, you majored in linguistics and now you operate in a totally different universe, it would seem, than that. So could you describe how you kind of got into the industry despite not studying in an area that kind of correlated with sneakers? And maybe like your decision on why to study linguistics as opposed to something else?
Yeah, so I majored in linguistics and I started on that path before I ever had a career in sneaker media. And I really came to a fork in the road when I was in college because I had started working for a website called Sneaker News. And I think it was 2011 on a freelance basis and writing blog posts for them regularly. And I was still in school at the time and kind of figuring out how to balance my time. I was going into my senior year, I think, and taking less classes. So I had more time in my schedule to spend on work. And I had a professor at the time who was kind of a mentor to me, a guy named Tyler Kendall in the linguistics department, who specifically worked in sociolinguistics and language variation and change. And I was looking into maybe doing some work with him in this lab he was going to be setting up. But at the same time, I had this other divergent path of this sneaker thing that I was focused on. And he kind of told me it seems like you're at this crossroads where you have to pick one or the other. And I ended up picking for my professional life this sneaker thing. And I'm happy I did, but also I'm happy that I spent that time in linguistics and I spent that time learning and studying those things because language and the way words relate to each other is something I care deeply about and something I love and something that's bouncing around in my brain all the time, even if it's not a tool that I use in my writing or my podcasts or the videos we put out. So I'm still so proud of that time I spent doing that. And I still kind of am in that world in my head, if not in a professional setting.
Obviously, there's a lot of cool perks that come with your job, but oftentimes there can be some misconceptions. So, what's one thing that some people don't know about your job that you wish they had a better understanding of?
I think just like how much, and I think people today are better at this than they were when I was coming out of college, but how much it's not just about writing. Like you have to have spent a good amount of hours in Photoshop. You have to know some HTML basics to know which pieces of code to tinker when a CMS screws you over on a post and you can't get the italics to work over a hyperlink or something like that. So I think just like how much this media thing requires a tool set that's beyond just writing, even though I consider myself a writer at heart. And that's like the tool I have that I think is most important and the one I can do the best with. But I think there's so many others that you need to be successful, even, you know, simple things like cropping the right ratios in Photoshop to get the preview on a thumbnail correct. All those things I've had to do for years. And I'm glad that I have because they just help me do my job more efficiently now.
I think that's really important to note. And if you could go back and change anything when you first started, what would you change?
Ooh, that's tough. I try not to like regret too many things, but I would say just doing more research, because I really did come up in an era of cranking out 3 or 4 blog posts in an hour, and the quality control and that stuff wasn't always great. So like I think just making sure that there were always the best sources possible, especially because when you're writing about something like sneakers, it's not, you don't have the reference guides or the hard data or facts to look to like you might in another field. So the release dates on certain shoes might not be universally agreed upon on the internet, or when colorways came out, or how limited some things were. That information is a lot more fuzzy in this world than it is in some others. So I think that doing a better job of tracking that stuff down exactly early on would have helped me out. But I think we do a great job of that now at Complex and Soul Collector.
Thank you so much for your time today, Brendan. This was an amazing way to kick off the new year. We always appreciate having a fellow Duck, and it was great hearing all your insights and your stories. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Sydney, Ryan,
Thank
everybody
you.
else. Really appreciate it.
Thank you
Go
so much,
Ducks,
Brendan.
obviously.
Hey, next time you're up in Eugene, we're gonna have to have you and Nick DePaula come on out or something. Have all the former Ducks and show you around all the new spots in Eugene. We'd love to have you.
Sounds good. Sydney can get me into Barnhart.
Yeah.